Aloha Jivas, welcome to our daily reading of Bhagavad Gita as it is by A.C. Bhaktivedanta, Swami Prabhupad. We are in the middle of Krishna's response to Arjuna's question about what are the symptoms of somebody who is in a transcendental or Krishna consciousness. And so Krishna is talking about how that looks like, explaining about controlling the senses, right? So let's continue. This is chapter 2, and we're starting with text 60. Yatato hi api kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramatini haranti prasabamanaha. The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. Purport. There are many learned sages, philosophers, and transcendentalists who try to conquer the senses, but in spite of their endeavors, even the greatest of them sometimes fall victim to material sense enjoyment due to the agitated mind. Even Vishvamitra, a great sage and perfect yogi, was misled by Menaka into sex enjoyment, although the yogi was endeavoring for sense control, with severe types of penance and yoga practice. And of course, there are so many similar instances in the history of the world. Therefore, it is very difficult to control the mind and the senses without being fully Krishna conscious. Without engaging the mind in Krishna, one cannot cease such material engagements. A practical example is given by Sri Yamunacharya, a great saint and devotee, who says, quote, "Since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and I have been enjoying an ever-new transcendental humor, whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it, and I spit at the thought." Unquote. Krishna consciousness is such a transcendentally nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man had satisfied his hunger by a sufficient quantity of nutritious eatables. Maharaj Ambarisha also conquered a great yogi, Durvasa Muni, simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. So as we can see, that it really all stems from our what's called monkey mind. The mind will think, no matter how we try to control it, it will continue to think. Now, a lot of like Buddhist type of practices use the term controlling the mind, or but really you can't stop the mind. Mind thinks. It will think. That's its duty. That's its job. Is designed to that. You cannot make it stop thinking. You have to either redirect the mind as it thinks, or control your response to what the mind is thinking. You can train your thoughts. This is the whole basis of NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, which is the practice of retraining your automatic thought responses to, like, frustrations, for example, or memories. So yeah, and by switching your thought perceptions about things, you can then experience a shift in your reactions and your desires. So people who choose to give up eating meat, for example, oftentimes is a result of seeing the reality behind the animal meat industry, seeing how torturous it is for these sentient, innocent animals. And, they don't want to partake in that system. That's just an example of why someone, might become vegetarian or vegan. And so once they see that, once their mind has processed, then they may no longer have the desire or taste to eat meat. And so meat eaters might be like, don't you miss meat? Don't you? And then it's like, no, I don't miss meat at all, because for whatever your motivation is, right, your mind has made that shift. Text 61. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta ashita matparaha vashehi yasyandriyani tasya pragya pratishtita. One who restrains his senses and fixes his consciousness upon me is known as a man of steady intelligence. Purport: that the highest conception of yoga perfection is Krishna consciousness is clearly explained in this verse. And unless one is Krishna conscious, it is not at all possible to control the senses. As cited above, the great sage Durvasa Muni picked a quarrel with Maharaj Ambarisha, and Durvasa Muni unnecessarily became angry out of pride, and therefore could not check his senses. On the other hand, the king, although not as powerful a yogi as the sage, but a devotee of the Lord, silently tolerated all the sage's injustices, and thereby emerged victorious. The king was able to control his senses because of the following qualifications, as mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Savai Manaha Krishna Padara Vindayor Vajamsi Vaikunta Gunana Varnane Karo Harer Mandira Marjana Diju Sritim Chakar Yachuta Sat Kato Daye. Mukunda Lingalaya Darshane Drisho Tad Britya Gatra Sparshenga Sangamam Granam Chatat Pada Saroja Sorabe Srimat Tulasya Rasanam Tadarpite Pado Hare Krishatra Padanusarpane Shiro Rishikesha Pada Bivandane Kamam Chadasye Natu Kama Kamyaya Yato Tamash Loka Janashraya Ratiha. Translated as, quote, King Ambarisha fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, engaged his words in describing the abode of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of the Lord, his body in touching the body of the devotee, his nostrils in smelling the flavor of the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, his tongue in tasting the tulsi leaves offered to him, his legs in traveling to the holy place where his temple is situated, his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. And all these qualifications made him fit to become a Matparaha devotee of the Lord. Unquote. The word Matparaha is most significant in this connection. How one can become a Matparaha is described in the life of Maharaj Ambarisha. Srila Baladev Vidyabhushana, a great scholar and acharya in the line of Matparaha, remarks, quote, Mad Bhakti Prabhavena Sarvendriya Vijaya Purvika Svatma Sristiha Sulabeti Bhavaha. Translated as, quote, the senses can be completely controlled only by the strength of devotional service to Krishna, unquote. Also, the example of fire is sometimes given. Quote, as the small flames within burn everything within the room, similarly, Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of the yogi, burns up all kinds of impurities, unquote. The Yoga Sutra also prescribes meditation on Vishnu and not meditation on the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something which is not the Vishnu form simply waste their time in a vain search after some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to the personality of Godhead. This is the aim of the real yoga. Text 62. Dhyayato vishayan pamsaha sangas teshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat kroto bijayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. Purport. One who is not Krishna conscious is subjected to material desires while contemplating the objects of senses. The senses require real engagements, and if they are not engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, they will certainly seek engagement in the service of materialism. In the material world, everyone, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to say nothing of other demigods in the heavenly planets, is subjected to the influence of sense objects, and the only method to get out of this puzzle of material existence is to become Krishna conscious. Lord Shiva was deep in meditation, but when Parvati agitated him for sense pleasure, he agreed to the proposal, and as a result, Kartikeya was born. When Haridas Thakur was a young devotee of the Lord, he was similarly allured by the incarnation of Maya Devi, but Haridas easily passed the test because of his unalloyed devotion to Lord Krishna. As illustrated in the above-mentioned verse of Sri Yamunacharya, a sincere devotee of the Lord shuns all material sense enjoyment due to his higher taste for spiritual enjoyment in the association of the Lord. That is the secret of success. One who is not, therefore, in Krishna consciousness, however powerful he may be in controlling the senses by artificial repression, is sure ultimately to fail, for the slightest thought of sense pleasure will agitate him to gratify his desires. Okay, so I like that term that they use, having a higher taste. So it's like sometimes when you experience something that is of a higher quality of what you may be accustomed to, you may lose the desire for that more mundane thing. So even using food again as an example, let's say, I don't know, you eat it like you're buying like the cheapest thing that you can get at the grocery store. Let's say a frozen pizza, okay? And so you're used to the taste of a cheap frozen pizza, and then someone brings to you a gourmet brick oven pizza or something like that you taste and you can't believe like what you've been missing out on all this time. Like, pizza can taste like this or whatever it is, and then it's like you don't really care so much for that cheap frozen pizza anymore because now you're desiring and longing for that better quality thing. So it's kind of similar to comparing material versus spiritual. It's having the finer taste that as you practice prayer and build a relationship with Krishna inside of you that is reciprocal, then naturally you begin to desire things that resonate more with spiritual things. So vegetarian is one of those examples. Not only, like I explained before, not wanting to partake in the harm of another sentient being, but you also realize that, that there's karma involved, and if you aspire to free yourself from the cycle of birth and death, then you're conscious also of the effect of karma, and so whatever actions that your sense impulses are kind of desiring, then it may be easier to control them or redirect them towards more spiritual choices. So yeah, and also what they say is these kinds of practices are like a bitter medicine at first, because we're so used to the sense pleasures of material enjoyment that having to control, restrict, those things is difficult. It's, no one's saying it's easy, but also oh, sorry, I lost my chain of thought there. Oh yeah, the bitter medicine. So, but if you aspire towards these spiritual gains, then you got to take that bitter pill, because it's good for you. It's like if you go on a diet to lose weight, you can't eat all those chips and ice cream like you used to, right? You just gotta eat the celery and the cucumbers or whatever it is in place of it. But after a time, you see the benefits, and so knowing those benefits shift your consciousness into not having the taste for those things that are ultimately not in your best interest, whether it's physically or mentally or spiritually. All right, so go you guys, and in all of your spiritual endeavors, and I pray that the Lord keep you protected and encouraged to continue on your path. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time. Hare Krishna.